There was a remake of a 1965 film called Flight of the Phoenix that came out in 2004. Today, as part of my Hollywood vs. Reality series on pilot movies, we're gonna see just how realistic it was. Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. So whether you're a pilot or an aviation enthusiast, consider subscribing. Next up on my Hollywood vs. Reality series, I'm doing the 2004 edition, Flight of the Phoenix. This is a pilot movie that stars Dennis Quaid, Tyrese, and Giovanni Ribisi, who, strangely enough, I met in an elevator several years ago, and he was actually super nice. Nothing like the Sheldon Cooper he plays in this film, but let's get into it.
I guess I need a ride to Beijing.
Not on this flight, Goober.
Anybody know who this guy is?
It's a long story.
Get on board. Hey, Jane, start us up.
Boss Frank.
Okay, all set, Mr. President. I think it's about that time that we do the checklist as the two bills. What do you say, buddy?
Well, why change a good thing? Go ahead, good buddy.
Allow me to grab my bulletin. Seatbelts.
I always like to have a little something strapped to my lap. Check.
Windows, doors, and hatches.
Closed and secured so no one can disturb us.
Water injection.
That's what she said. Check.
Gyros.
Set and uncaged, just like yours truly.
And last but not least, cow flaps.
Till the cows come home. All right, I think we're ready to go. Get a kiss your lucky man.
I'll make it happen right now.
All right, clear left.
Clear right. All right, here we go.
First, let me talk about how much fun these guys are actually having on the flight deck. There is nothing better than if you're flying with someone that you have a great relationship with and you're having fun, you're flying, you guys are joking around but still working and you're getting paid for it. There's really nothing better than that, and that's basically what's happening in this first scene. These guys have obviously been flying together for a long time. They have their little rhythm and routine. It's awesome, and it's a lot of fun if you ever get to do that. Usually in the airlines, you're not flying with the same people again and again, so you're not able to build this type of rapport in 2 or 3 days. I mean, you could, but it's not that normal. But if you're flying charters or lots of different random type of flying, and you're flying with the same people, you can find someone you get along with really well and just have a blast while you're working, and that's basically what's happening here. The one thing I wasn't sure of is he said he was going to get his checklist out, but he called it a bulletin.
Allow me to grab my bulletin.
I don't know if that's something that they called it back in the days. This is a World War II era aircraft. It's a C-119 called the Flying Boxcar. It came out just after World War II, and I don't know if at that time they were calling checklist bulletins, but so I wasn't sure if that was a Hollywood goof or just something that came out at that time. Now, these World War II era planes had radial engines, and I'm not going to get into explaining how a radial engine works because it's not very relevant for this film, and I think if I tried to make a video explaining that, my editor might kill me. You saw I did the how does a jet engine work video, and it got broken up into 2 parts, and I think that was overly complex for him to put that all together. So we're not going to get into how they work, but you notice that he was putting in those shotgun looking shells into that canister. The radial engines of this time had something called a shotgun starter, so it's kind of fitting. So those shells that were actually getting put in there, what they do is they fire off into the radial engine and actually kickstart it or jumpstart it. And then the combustion of the engine actually takes over from there. So that's what you see him loading up in there is actually the shotgun shells that they have. And obviously he's putting those in there so he can load those up and put it in, and that's what fires off and gets the engine started. All right, now that that's established, let's get back into the film.
That's a big one, Frank. What do you want to do? Frank isn't that lucky man again. Frank, if we go back, we'd have to get refueled. God knows how long that'd take. Let's go up to 14. I've never seen one go that high before. Give me full power. Watch the climb, about 700 feet a minute. You're the boss, Frank. That was the aerial, Frank. Oh, great. Go in the back and calm them down. Got it.
Now, on the topic of safety, this is something that's very important for a lot of up-and-coming pilots. You see the captain is making this poor decision of, no, we'll just go anyways, even though it's very obvious that this is going to be a really bad situation that they're flying into. There's something that you'll learn when you get to the airlines in human factors. It's a symptom called get-there-itis. It's basically where, despite what the risks are, you're feeling the desire to complete the mission, basically complete the flight, despite the fact that it's very obvious that the situation is different than what you had planned for. So it's a very tricky situation when you're a first officer and your captain say, no, let's do it. What my recommendation to you is, if you are a first officer and you do have this situation, is to voice something to the captain in a delicate way saying, you know, maybe I'm lacking in a lot of experience, but this is something that's making me really uncomfortable. That should trigger something in the captain's mind to go, okay, maybe there's something I'm not seeing here. Then he or she will eventually explain to you what their idea is and why they think it's safe. It's your choice at that point to say, no, I don't think that that's a great idea. That opens up a dialogue in a very gentle way, versus if you challenge the captain saying, this is a stupid idea, that's generally not going to result in a good outcome. If you say, I'm not comfortable with it, that should open the door for some dialogue. One of the things that doesn't really make sense in this scene is that they're flying low. They're flying, I don't know, maybe 7,000 or 8,000 feet above the desert. Now, I've flown a lot in South Texas, and that's not like flying over the deserts of Mongolia, but I will tell you that when you're flying low like that over a very hot area, you're one, very hot, and two, the ride usually sucks. The C-19 can go above 20,000 feet, so it doesn't make any sense why they're flying that low. I'm guessing that's just a Hollywood aspect to get them into this trap of flying into the sandstorm, but you generally aren't going to fly a plane that low. That doesn't really make any sense. All right, let's get back into the movie.
Look like it's going higher. We'll go around it. Center course 180, due south. About 200 miles ought to do it. 180. All right, we're coming around it. Okay. Oh, God.
Remember what I said earlier about not speaking up? Tyrese is obviously very uncomfortable in the situation. You see him exhaling and getting really nervous. It's because he didn't speak up, and now the captain has put them into a corner. Again, I know it's uncomfortable to speak up, especially when you know and you're lacking experience, but it's a lot less uncomfortable than getting jammed up into a thunderstorm. So make sure that you speak up, because it's not only you that are dependent. Obviously, if you're flying passengers, you got the rest of your crew. All of them are relying on you to challenge the captain if they're putting you into a bad situation. This is actually a very realistic scenario. I've flown with guys that are saying, hey, let's go and we'll take off. And I'm thinking, no, that's a massive thunderstorm that we're about to take off into. And I did that. I was very new and we were about to take off. And the captain said, no, let's take off. And I go, that's a massive thunderstorm. And that cell is right over the end of the runway. And he said, I think we're going to be okay. And I said, I don't really feel comfortable with that. Can we just wait a couple minutes? It's going to pass and then we can just continue the flight. And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So we called tower and we actually pulled off to the side and everybody behind us said the same thing. So we waited a couple minutes. Now, this captain had probably 15,000 hours of experience and we probably would have been fine. But I wasn't comfortable with it and he respected that. So it's important to voice your opinion. Now, something that's not too realistic is Dennis, the captain in this movie, isn't really leaving himself any outs. That's kind of pilot 101. You generally aren't going to get pilots in this current day and age that are going to jam themselves up into a corner. Meaning, okay, we're not going to get there, we'll climb up above it. Oh, it's now even bigger. Okay, let's go into the middle of the storm and let's see what we find out then. That's generally not what guys are going to do because that's pilot 101. So that's not very realistic. You want to have yourself a plan A, obviously, and then you want a B, and in this situation, you're probably going to want a C in case it doesn't work out. He's getting himself deeper and deeper into a corner, and that's not something you really want to do. But again, you want to have yourself a backup option in case plan A or B isn't working in this scenario. All right, let's get back to the movie.
We're in trouble here, AJ. Check the map. Find the nearest place we can set it down. Lugar's our best shot, but it's 300 miles south of the basin. Well, maybe we can outrun it. Our location is approximately 40 degrees, 9 minutes north latitude, 84 degrees, 42 minutes east longitude. Here we go. You putting the gear down? Never get it back up again if we don't. Mayday, mayday, repeat. Mayday, mayday. Any stations copy? AJ, ready to passengers.
So Tyrese gives him another option here of going to a different airport, and the captain's saying, no, we'll outrun it. That is just poor decision making. If you research a lot of accident investigations, you'll see that it's a chain of events that leads to an accident. Now, in this situation, the captain is making a bunch of poor decisions, and the first officer, Tyrese, is having the option to challenge him, but he's not doing that. And so in not challenging him, he's also making bad decisions. So that's how this is leading into the accident. Now you see the gauges on the instrument panel really spinning around like that. That's not something that you'd actually see in an aircraft in a normal situation, and I realize they're not in a normal situation, but they're still flying. So you generally aren't going to see your instruments actually spinning around like that. I think that's more of a Hollywood effect. Now the captain decided to put the gear down, and the reason that he did that is, I believe, a lot of aircraft, their landing gear is actually powered through a hydraulic system, and that hydraulic system is powered through the engines. So if he's anticipating losing both engines, he's thinking, if I don't put the gear down, I'm never going to be able to get it down. And obviously, if you're going to crash land, you would want that extra level of protection when you're hitting the ground. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you what I'm saying, just leave a comment in the section below, and I'll try to think of a different way to explain it. But just imagine that a hydraulic line is actually getting powered from the engines, and he's thinking if those engines die, he's going to crash land. So at this point, he already knows he's jammed himself up, and it's going to crash. All right, let's get back to the movie. And finally, some really Hollywood aspects of this movie come out. The max speed of the C-119 is 240 knots roughly, so I'm not sure how he's able to have so much speed and momentum that he's able to blow through these massive mounds of sand and skid halfway across the Gobi Desert, but that's the Hollywood aspect of it. Alright, so the prop blowing off the front of the engine and then speeding up and then shooting into the plane, I don't see how that's possible, but let's just imagine that it does happen. And then the rudder snapping off as he's stepping on the pedal, I guess, is now creating a failure with the inability to correct it, which is causing the plane to invert. But I don't really understand why that would be the case. Normally you would just bank your airplane into that operating engine, but let's just say that that happened, but it doesn't really make any sense why he was able to roll it all the way back around and get it level, but let's just imagine that that's possible. Then there's a bag of tools that flies out the back of the aircraft and perfectly slices the backside of the plane into two equally nice pieces. I don't see how that's possible or how the aircraft would be able to sustain it, but this is Hollywood. You know, and this is a World War II era plane, and they say they don't build them like they used to. And those World War II airplanes seem like they could fly on one wing, so I guess anything's possible. Next, you see the guy getting sucked out the back of the plane. Now, the plane isn't going that fast, and it's acting like he's standing next to a large pressurized aircraft that just had the door blow out. If that was the case in real life, then skydivers wouldn't need to jump out the back of the plane. They would just get sucked out the back of the plane. So that's clearly an effect of Hollywood, because he's trying to hold on and he's just getting sucked out the back. So that doesn't really make any sense. So that's really more of a Hollywood thing. And the last thing that's also very Hollywood in this is the people are getting their hair blown back like they're Beyonce at a concert. So there is going to be wind spooling around in there, but they're not going to be looking like they're standing in the front of a wind tunnel with their hair getting blown back like that. So that's obviously just for the effects of Hollywood. All right, let's get back to it.
I have an idea. I can get us out of here. I've been examining the plane. You see, the C-119 is a twin boom design. And the starboard boom here isn't damaged. Which is great, because if the starboard engine stays where it is, at the forward end of the starboard boom, this boom then becomes the fuselage. Becomes the plane.
What do you know about airplanes?
I designed them, Mr. Towns. That's what I know about airplanes.
Who do you work for? What company?
Sizemore and Pratt. They're in Long Beach. They do mostly experimental aircraft.
Mm-hmm. And you understand that engine's got a 2,000-pound thrust?
Yes, so?
Yeah, so when it gets started, it's gonna tear your little bee apart.
Well, you'll just have to be careful this time. The design is perfect. The only flaw is that we have to rely on you to fly it.
So in theory, what he's saying is actually possible. In this aircraft here, he's basically saying this section of the aircraft is actually not damaged. So with that not being damaged, he's able to recreate a fuselage out of this portion here, attach both wings, and the plane would fly. And I'm not an aircraft engineer, but in theory it makes sense to me. And I do find it a little funny, the interaction between the engineers and the pilot. And I got to imagine that there is some of this yin and yang between pilots and engineers when they're coming up with new aircraft. So it is kind of funny where the engineer's saying, it's flawless, you're the problem. Because I could see some engineers actually saying that or thinking that. Now this next scene I left in there because I think it's probably the most unrealistic portion of this movie. I'll show you. Tell me that those are the best dance moves that Tyrese has. He looks like Kevin James in Hitch.
That's what it's all about, right?
Next, you have a businessman who obviously has brought his golf clubs and golf balls out to the desert to practice and stay good, and the best that he can do is hit the ball about 30 feet. That doesn't seem very realistic. And finally, and I realize I'm running on a bunch of stereotypes here, but I think every flight attendant out watching this is going to agree. The likelihood that if your plane crashes and you end up in a deserted place like this, and both of your pilots are in as good a shape of Tyrese and Dennis Quaid are in this movie are just basically zero. So this entire scene was completely Hollywood for sure. Alright, let's get into the last scene of the movie.
Mr. Towns! Hang on!
Alright, so let's just assume that everybody's able to hang on to the aircraft in his very steep nose-up climb when he comes out and then banks it over like that. Let's just imagine that that happened. I don't quite understand why they're, for weight and balance, have 5 people on one side of a wing and 2 on the other. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I don't understand the logic behind that. Why you wouldn't just pair up 2 people unless it was something to do with the wing construction or something like that. But if it was strong enough to hold the weight of the airplane in flight, you would think it'd be able to hold a 200-pound person hanging on the side of it. Alright, crew. So that's the end of my Flight of the Phoenix review. If you like the movie, I'll put a link to the movie in the description below. Thank you for all of you guys that have been leaving comments requesting different movies for me to review. I'm really enjoying doing this series. If you're liking my Hollywood vs. Reality series, consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell notification. That way every time a video comes out, you'll know about it. I actually have a whole list of different movies you guys have requested me to review, so I'm working on those as I have time on these different layovers. In the comment section below, let me know, would you trust to fly on an aircraft from an engineer who was actually a model aircraft engineer? I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up. Usually when you get to the airlines, you're not flying with the same people again and again, so usually you don't be... Now the captain decided to put the gear down, and the reason he decided to do that was a lot of landing gear is powered through a hydraulic power. That doesn't even make any sense. The captain decided to put the gear down, and the reason that he decided to do that, I believe, is a lot of aircraft are actually powered... Now the captain decided to put the gear down, and the reason he decided to do that is a lot of hydraulics... Oh my gosh. Flight of the Phoenix was actually a really great movie. I'll put a link to the description...